Hello, good morning, everybody. How's it going? Welcome. My name is Todd Nauck. I draw comic books for a living, and I want to welcome you to today's art live stream as we wrap up week 8 of my COVID-19 stay-at-home art live stream series. Can't believe it's been 8 weeks. This is wrapping up week 8. I started on March 17th, and now it is May 8th. So, gang, gonna do another post-it note illustration here for Friday, May 8th. We're gonna draw Venom. We drew Carnage several weeks ago. Let's try drawing Venom today. I've got a blue post-it note. I thought Venom might look good on blue. We drew Carnage on red, so why not Venom on blue? So yeah, feel free to draw along. You don't have to use a post-it note if you don't have any. Use your sketchbook or a notepad or whatever is appropriate for you to draw on. Use whatever tools you have at hand. Whatever pencils, crayons, colored pencils, pens of whatever sort that are appropriate to use, just use that. I'll be sharing my tips and tricks, so hopefully you'll maybe learn a thing or two, and hopefully an even greater goal is to have some fun. So please, let's get to drawing. Let me just flip the camera around and readjust the light as I do every time. I'll try to respond to questions and comments while I draw, if I can catch them in time. So I'm going to start with my, you know what I'm going to use, you longtime viewers, my Unikura toga. Draw Venom here. Going to start with a circle. Get that skull shape going. Going to kind of move him here a little bit to the right of center so we have room for some of his facial features. Now he's got a bit of a exaggerated face. I'm going to have him looking up, just to kind of play with a new angle here. He's got a big jaw. He's got a very exaggerated look to him, very monstrous. So once Eddie Brock is fully venomized, his facial features change to very inhuman. So we're going to start the mouth here. And it's going to pull up to some cheekbones. Then we're just going to pull that bottom of the mouth. So we're going to have a big open mouth here. A big gaping maw. So I'm thinking in kind of a three-dimensional sense here. So that's the side of his head. So that's the side. This is the front. That's the top of the forehead. This is the eye line. Eddie Brock's eyeballs would be right about there. And then we'll put those big venomy white eyes go around it like that. So I have my center line coming down here. So this kind of helps me see as the mouth curves up to this side, it's going to curve around here to the other side cheek to the best of my ability. And then we're going to have that big mouth and jawline. Now he's got his enormous fangs. And then, so it goes down the side to the front of the face and then over to the other side to give it a three-dimensional look. And then his tongue, which is going to connect at the bottom part of his mouth here. I'm going to kind of curl it around there. Going to give him a little bit of a brow there, a little indentation of the side of the head. The white parts of his eyes. So we see the full Spider-Man shape coming around this way, but the other side, we have to imagine how it wraps around. Structure out the back of his head and to his neck. Big, thick neck muscle. Shoulder. Down to his chin here. So So then we have the smile lines, like the mouth lines, that pull up the face here. And then the jaw here, where it connects. So I want to consider the muscles that pull underneath the face. And you can like look at a person who is like a photo of someone who's giving a really big smile, and look at the way the muscles pull on their face, and then you can exaggerate that to an even greater degree because Venom is such an exaggeration. We'll have some saliva and spittle flying everywhere. Okay. And then we're gonna have some dark, you know, his costume is mostly black, but there'll be open areas that we'll leave for color. So I'm gonna consider all of the shapes of the muscles, like his neck muscle and his shoulder. If the light is coming from above, then everything underneath, like the chin overlaps the neck, so that's gonna leave a shadow. Each muscle grouping, I'm going to consider a different shape. I'm going to think, where does the light hit? And where would the shadow fall on the opposite side? Okay, so this gives us enough to work with, or at least gives me enough to work with. How do I put lighting onto black? You must have just tuned in. I was just explaining that, and I'll explain it further as I ink. So glad you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to everyone. So let's start dropping some inks on here. I'm going to use my Pigment Microns, my 08 and my 01, maybe a little bit of 005 for even finer points if I need. So we're going to start working from the foreground. And then we'll get to the point where I'll explain more of how I create the light and dark sections. So I consider the teeth as we move further towards the back, how they start to overlap. You don't have these pens? That's quite all right. Use whatever pens you have. A lot of people ask what tools I use, so I always try to make sure I share what tools I use for my art projects, because that's a very, very, very common question that I get. But you certainly don't have to use the same tools I use. You don't have to. Use whatever you have in your household right now, and that's totally cool. So you want to consider the overlap. Now the tongue here is going to overlap some things. Even though I penciled teeth all the way around that other side, the tongue is going to overlap it. So we won't see those teeth, but at least I know where those teeth are. I'm going to texture that tongue as it goes to the floor of the mouth there. This bottom part of the tongue is going to overlap those teeth. A little curl there. Let's see, let's work on this side of the face here. I saw someone ask questions. How do I capture likenesses of like a real person? For me, it's just kind of I utilize my skills in life drawing and my approach to life drawing, and then I look at photographs and videos of that person, and then just study the shapes of their face, and then try to replicate that with my style of line and shape. So that's probably about the best way I can answer that question. So I hope that helps you. So right now I'm just going to do all the line work, and then we're going to fill in the big black areas and show where I leave black and what parts I fill in black and what parts I work on the main detail lines, and then I'll fill in those black shapes afterwards. So I want to make sure these lines create all the right structure and shape first, and then I fill in the big black areas. That's just my approach. It's not the only approach. Hopefully that might be a help to some of y'all. Someone asked, how long did I work at Rob Liefeld's Extreme Studios? That's where I got my big break into comics. Let's see, he hired me from like mid-1994 to late 1996. We get this other shoulder over here. Now we're going to work in these eye parts. They're going to be jaggedy. You think of like Spider-Man's lenses, and then you add these jagged elements to them. So think the Spider-Man lens shape, but then make it all jiggedy jaggedy. Okay. Put some details of the inside of his mouth. Kind of the back of the mouth there, like towards his throat. Okay, so now I want to put in all the black shapes. People were asking, how do I know where to put the black shapes on Venom here, or any dark colored character? Black Panther, Black Costume Spidey, anyone like that. Batman. Do watch my Batman video series as well that I did last week. I addressed this there as well. So I consider the light source, so the light's coming from above, so the light's going to hit like the top of his head and on the tops of his shoulders. So I think, where is the light hitting, and where would the shadow be? So like here on the side of the head. Now mind you, it isn't, in this regard, maybe it's not always shadow, but it is the black of his costume being dominant, and then a white highlight on that black. Or a light highlight. We'll use some grays to convey that fade from black to highlight, which would be a gray. So I'm going to fill this part in black, the side of his head, and this part of his cheek, because I would see light hitting that top part of the cheek. So the bottom part of the cheek is going to be black. I put little X's there to remind myself, fill this in with black ink. Now his forehead here, we're going to make black. Mind you, this isn't necessarily shadow, as in most of his costume, or the symbiote, is black. So we're working really with highlight on black. So we really want to bring home that black. So it's not, sometimes we're thinking of shadows, sometimes we're just thinking of the base color of that object. And for Venom, it's black. So I'm going to put some X's here to remind myself to fill those in areas with black. Those areas in with black. I think I had that sentence completely out of order. I'm going to thicken up some of these lines on the muscle pulls of his facial feature here, his mouth. And then right here on the jaw, I'm going to make that spot black, leaving this as a highlight and leaving a halo here. So it separates his jaw from the big, now in this case it is a shadow, but it also happens to be the black part of his costume that goes underneath the chin and down the neck and to the Adam's apple. and the other side of the inside of the neck. And then here on this opposite side of the neck, we're going to have where the muscles pull towards the shoulder. Going to have a chunk right there on the shoulder, right there on that little shoulder muscle, because I'm thinking of the light landing right there on his shoulder. All right, so then we have this side of the neck, with that big main neck muscle running up the side. So that will be filled in black. Then we have this one striation here of ligaments, tendons, whatever, other muscles kind of pulling through there. So that kind of breaks up this one big one here. And so that's going to be a black area. And then we can just add more. We're going to do this black shoulder muscle shape. And some of the smaller little striations, muscular striations through there. Then we have like the collarbone that runs across here, that pulls towards the pectoral muscle. We have some black spots right in there. Those two areas there will be filled in black. So you study your life drawing for sure. You know, your anatomy, learn the shapes of the muscles, and then you think of each muscle as its own shape, and you deal with it with the lighting as its own shape, just like you would shade, like if you're drawing an illustration of like a baseball, like when you have to draw a sphere in art class, and you have to do the shading on one side and the reflected light and all that. It's that mentality just done for each thing. So I'm going to put some texture here into his tongue to make it look a little more monstrous. So on the underside is where I'm putting most of the texture. It's kind of shadowed because it's further away from the light. And I'm pulling it around because the tongue is kind of got almost like a monstrous tentacle-like aspect to it. So these curved lines help give shape and form to the tongue. And then the darker lines, the thicker dark lines underneath give a sense of a shadow as we pull to a thinner line. As we move towards the light source. And then this part here, it's moving further away from the light, so it gets more shadow. Oh, and then we have his chin here. So I'm considering the light hitting the top of the bottom lip. And then whatever left he has of a chin, because that mouth is just so big and cartoony and exaggerated. Just put a little bit of a chin there. Maybe I'll put a little open area right there to see a little bit of his brow, and I'll fill in black all around that part there. Okay, so now I need to erase. So as I clip, let's see, I got my pens clipped closed. I'm going to take my kneaded art gum eraser, K-N-E-A-D, kneaded, like you knead bread, not N-E-E-D, but kneaded art gum eraser. And I can use this to gently erase out these lines, these guidelines. Just take them right out. Don't need them anymore. Going to fill in all those black areas here in a moment. I like to erase before I fill in the black. It's just safer. Oops, I forgot to put a little X inside there to remind myself to fill that in black. So what I'm going to do now is take my Pentel Pocket brush pen, and let's just fill in all the black here. So I'm just going to very carefully brush it all in, going right up to the lines I've inked as best I can. And then you really start to see the separation of the black to the open area, which in that open area we'll fill in with gray Copic marker. I'll be using Copic sketch markers, but use whatever colors you have. You don't have to use Copics. And here on the jaw, so we just did the side of the head. Now here on the jawline, right there like that, or that jaw section. Now ideally I like to work from top to bottom, left to right, because I'm right-handed. So it keeps my palm from like going over the art and smudging it. So I try to work top to bottom, left to right, so that my palm is avoiding the wet ink area. Trust me, lesson learned, lesson relearned again and again and again. Okay, and then just this little bit here on his chest. The way we're angled, we don't really see the white spider that should be on his chest. It would be just below the paper there. Okay, so now we're going to let that dry there for a little bit. We're going to pull the camera back just a smidge. And then we're going to come in with we're going to start to color him up. So I'm wanting to fade from the black to lighter shades of gray. So I'm going to start with like a neutral gray 5 here. It's kind of a medium shade gray. That's kind of my initial gray to pull from. So I'm just coming from the black areas out a little bit into the open area. And we're going to do a gradation of dark gray, or like a medium gray to a light gray. To give a sense of the light making the black less black. To give an indication of that's where the light is hitting, is on the gray is the quote-unquote highlight, as I do some air quotes there, semi-on camera. So I'm going to take that, so I used a neutral gray 5, and now I'm going to go to a neutral gray 3, which is just a little bit lighter. I might just leave a little bit, some teeny tiny bits of blue of the paper on here, like not fill it all in with gray, but just a little bitty sliver of blue as a final highlight on Venom here. So I'm not going to cover it all up with gray. You can if you want to. You're more than welcome to do that. Just a kind of a stylistic choice here I'm making to leave a little bit of the blue of the paper, because it gives a little bit of a vibe of a highlight. All right, let's deal with this tongue here. We got this crazy tongue. So I'm going to use some shade pink. I'm going to start with a very dark pink, an RV95. It's kind of muted pink color. I'm just going to hit the bottom side of his tongue, and maybe deep inside the recesses of his mouth here, way back here, where the light does not get to as well. That's a very, very dark shade of pink, like a grayish pink. Now I'm going to go to the RV32. Use whatever pinks you have, use whatever colors you have. It's totally okay. And the pink is going to show up very muted on here on this blue paper. And that's okay. That's kind of the fun of it. That's why I like working on colored paper, is because it gives such a unique, different effect than coloring on white paper. Still love to work on white paper, but also like to work on colored paper just so I can see a different effect. And I'm leaving a little highlight there of the artboard so I put the light pink going up over on this side, so we leave this little sliver of blue as like a highlight on his tongue. And it just kind of gives it some nice rounded form of the tongue. And my guidelines of the lines I inked kind of helped me see how cylindrical that tongue can be. So now we're going to now we have kind of these semi-white teeth and his white eyes. So if you haven't seen my live streams before, welcome. I've got a trick that I do because I'm working on colored paper here. I would not do this for white paper. I do this strictly because it's colored paper. So I'm going to use a darker shade of gray than I would if I'd used white paper, if I was working on white paper. So I'm going to come with some warm gray 4 to start to sculpt out my teeth. Now, if I was on white paper, I'd use like a warm gray 2, a warm gray 1 or 2. But because I'm on blue paper, I have to work darker, and you'll see why in a moment here. So I'm sculpting out the teeth with color. Like these are the shadows to create the teeth. And now I'm going to use some a darker cool gray on his eyes here to sculpt them out. I'd probably use a cool gray 1 or 2 with maybe some light blue. But here I'm going to use some cool gray 5. And I'm going to create this kind of reflective pattern, which you often see me do in my Spider-Man illustrations. I'm doing the same idea with Venom's eyes here. And I'm going to try bringing in some very light blue. How would this look? Oh, it looks pretty cool. We're going to bring in some B01. So I'm thinking that the light is hitting on the top of his eye, and so it's like a reflective surface. So the dark part is reflecting the world around him, and then fading up to what would be the possibly sky or light above. So that's the mentality there of creating a reflective surface. Now I'm going to come in with my white art pencil here. I use a Derwent Inktense white colored pencil here. You can use any brand, Prismacolor, Grumbacher, and then I'm going to color over that gray just a little bit to get it to fade to just the right shade of gray as if I had colored it on white paper. I use a warm gray to give him a nice dingy color to his teeth. Because I would not imagine this symbiote has the best oral hygiene. Though I'm sure those fangs are very strong. Then I'm going to color over the gray in his eyes, as well as the upper blue part, to fade it out to just the right shade of gray. So just like that, and now I'm getting white on colored paper. That's my approach to that. I need to add some gray shadows here. So I'm going to use some cool gray 4. I'm going to run this gray along the bottom of his tongue, just to kind of give some nice shadow. Gonna run this cool gray in the back of his mouth. Helps create some nice depth and texture. As you can see. All right, so next up is let's create a fade behind Venom here for the background. And I'm thinking, usually I use grays for a fade for most of my post-its, but because Venom is mostly black and gray, I don't think I want to use gray this go around. I think I want to use, maybe let's try some shades of bluish purple. So I'm going to start with a BV25. Just kind of throw down some spots of purple, and then I'm going to go to a BV34. It's kind of a different shade of bluish gray. I'm going to kick it over to a BV11. And then let's finish this off with a little V01. Actually, I'm going to even fade that out with a little bit of a blue. Use a little bit of blue here, a B000. All right. So now I'm going to bring in my Uniball Sigma white gel pen, one of my favorite gel pens to use. I'm going to do my finishing move outline around Venom because I love the way it makes him pop, makes the character pop off the page. There's one other trick I'm going to show you here. So even though this is my finishing move, I'm not quite finished. I have secondary finishing move. That's today's twist. Just bringing that outline right up to the black line, not over the black line if I can avoid it. It's okay if it goes over the black line a little bit, that's okay. But my intention is to not do that. Okay, so I'm going to put a highlight in his eyes here. So I'm just going to kind of color in these ovals that kind of run right through the center. And then, what's one thing that's missing from this illustration of Venom that we often see with Venom? Saliva. So I'm going to use my white gel pen. Actually, I'm going to switch to the Jelly Roll white gel pen and get the saliva going. I'm just going to kind of let it pull around. Some little dots of saliva and spittle everywhere, maybe pulling down from his teeth in a creepy, scary sort of way. Maybe some drops. See the tongue? Now if the tongue is flicking out this way, maybe some saliva is being thrown off of his tongue to show a sense of motion. Got to be careful not to overdo it. A little bit overlapping onto the teeth there. There we go. That makes him look even scarier and creepier. Now I'll take my 0.1 micron. I can sign and date this piece. Today is the 8th. That's why I said earlier, right? Yeah, it is. And there we go. Venom on a Post-it note. So, yeah, this is a lot of fun to draw. It's always fun to draw Venom because he's such a big, weird, scary, hulking, creepy character. So let's flip the camera around and we can wrap up today's live stream. All right, click back into the rig. There we go. Hey, everybody. Awesome. Thanks so much for hanging out with me this week. Thanks for hanging out with me today specifically. Here's Venom. There will be a shot of him up on my social media, so make sure you're following me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's the Art of Todd Nauck Facebook page. All those links are in the video description below. So just go below. You can click on it and head over there and follow me on whichever whichever social media that you might also be on. And I'll also have a direct link to the shot of this on my Instagram as well. That link will be forthcoming. If you're watching this on replay, it might already be in the video description below. If you like what you saw today, please leave me a thumbs up. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below if you're watching on replay. Live viewers, thank you for all the questions and comments that you posted throughout today's live stream. Appreciate that. And if you just discovered my channel, please subscribe. Please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future art live streams and art videos. Little teaser for tomorrow. Tomorrow, Saturday, I will not be, there's no plans to do a live stream on Saturday. I tend not to live stream on the weekends. But a live stream I had done a few weeks ago on my Instagram will be uploaded here to my YouTube channel tomorrow morning at, I think, 10 a.m. Pacific time. It is Squirtle. So if you want to see how my illustration of Squirtle came about, it'll be here on my YouTube tomorrow. So make sure you're subscribed so that when that uploads and goes live, you can come over and watch that. So gang, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you're doing well. Hopefully you're staying safe. Keep washing those hands. And yeah, I hope you're staying safe and well during this COVID-19 time, and we can get through this as soon as possible. Remember to be gracious and kind to those that you encounter, because we're all going through this together, and especially be gracious and kind with the people you're living with, because I know many of us are trapped at home and sometimes we can get a little stir crazy. That's understandable. That's okay. We're all human, but if we can think to be kind and gracious, it can go a long way in making things a little bit better. Hopefully a lot of it better. Gang, it's so good to hang out with you. Thanks for drawing with me, and I'll see you again real soon. So until then, I'm Todd Nauck. Keep on drawing, keep having fun. Take care.